let's go ahead. Let's look at the quote-unquote highlights from Trump's speech yesterday. I got this video courtesy of Al Jazeera only because this was the one video I saw on YouTube that didn't have the word highlight in the title, because these aren't highlights. This is not something to be thrilled about. This is not something to celebrate. I'm also going to talk about the Democrats' ridiculous resistance, I guess, with the exception of my king, Al Green, who was like really the only Democrat who actually stood up to Trump during this event. They did this color coding bullshit. They had these auction signs with various phrases on them, and like, that's great and everything. But what would have been more of a show of resistance was following in Al Green's footsteps, was not allowing Donald Trump to speak at all without being interrupted. Unfortunately, I'm not going to cover Bernie Sanders's speech that he gave towards the end of Trump's speech. He walked out. He was not thrilled with the ridiculous amount of lying that went on. And of course, Bernard Cooked. He went on YouTube. I watched it on YouTube, but he went live and basically just rebuked everything that Donald Trump said. Let's go ahead. Let's watch this. Keep in mind, this video is on 1.25 speed because I don't want to spend fucking 57 minutes just commenting on this.
To Donald Trump and his address for a joint session of Congress here on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C.
Enough clapping. What the fuck?
It's a great honor. Thank you very much. Speaker Johnson, Vice President Vance, the First Lady of the United States. Of the United members of the United States Congress, thank you very much. And to my fellow citizens, America is back. 6 weeks ago, I stood beneath the dome of this Capitol and proclaimed the dawn of the golden age of America. From that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action to usher in the greatest and most successful era in the history of our country. We have accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years.
Notable accomplishments include tanking the stock market by like 1,300 points due to his flagrant and ridiculous tariffs on our 3 biggest trading partners. Also notable accomplishments like deregulating the EPA and removing countless numbers of federal employees from their positions. Yeah, guys, America is back. Donald Trump, the free speech president who also threatened to withhold funding from colleges who allow peaceful protests. America is back. When he says America is back, he means like the early 20th century, where if you're a wealthy person, you can literally just do whatever the fuck you want. It doesn't matter.
For 8 years, and we are just getting started. I return to this chamber tonight to report that America's momentum is back, our spirit is back, our pride is back, our confidence is back, and the American dream is surging bigger and better than ever before. The American dream is unstoppable, and our country is on the verge of a comeback, the likes of which the world has never witnessed and perhaps will never witness again. There's never been anything like it.
Yeah, definitely never been anything quite as bad
The
as
presidential election of November 5th was a mandate like has not been seen in many decades. We won all 7 swing states, giving us an electoral college victory of 312 votes.
There's really something that needs to be discussed more when Trump mentions this mandate bullshit. The Republicans have a slim majority in the House, a slim majority in the Senate, and Trump won the popular vote by like 1.5 percentage points, which was one of the lowest margins of victory in recent memory. When Joe Biden won back in 2020, he won by like 7 percentage points. This is not a mandate. He barely became president. When you talk about a mandate, you think about FDR back in the 40s when this guy won by like 47 states, had huge majorities in the House and the Senate, controlling 80% of those chambers at any given time. Donald Trump barely became president. This mandate that he's talking of is farcical.
We won the popular vote by big numbers and won counties in our country.
Not even, dude. Like the smallest number possible. Oh, here goes my King Al Green popping off.
And won counties in our country, 2,700 to 525, on a map that reads almost completely red for Republican. Now, for the first time in modern history, more Americans believe that our country is headed in the right direction than the wrong direction.
Polls do not.
It's an
Polls do not
astonishing
reflect
record,
that.
27-point swing, the most ever.
Keep in mind, there are polls show that like only Republicans think that Donald Trump is taking the country in a new direction. The majority of independents are not thrilled with his policy prescription to start. There's virtually no Democrats that are thrilled with his policy prescription to start. He spent 90 minutes literally just lying. And JD Vance and Mike Johnson had to do like 100 squats because they kept standing up to clap, and then they would sit down, and then Trump would say some other dumbass shit, and they would get up and clap again. It was really just, it was a sad display from the Republican Party. The levels of cuckoldry are previously unrecorded. These folks represent people in districts that are going to be fucked over remarkably by the Trump tax cut, by the cuts that are happening to Medicaid, the $880 billion cut that's happening to Medicaid. That is, it passed the House. We still have to see what happens with the Senate. Also, the Trump tax cuts, which are going to tax low and middle income earners at a higher rate. These folks are going to be devastated. And the fact that their elected representatives allow the president to get away with peddling such brazen lies is beyond shameful. If we were a functioning government, if we had actual competency in Washington, D.C., Republicans would be calling out Donald Trump for all of the bullshit that he does. Just like how when the Democrats do some fuck shit, I'm up there criticizing them just as much as when the Republicans do fuck shit, because that is what your job is. You are beholden to the people that elected you. You are supposed to behave in a manner that is beneficial to them. You're not just supposed to be a cum dump for the president.
Likewise, small business optimism saw its single largest one-month gain ever recorded, a 41-point jump.
Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House and to cease any further disruptions. That's your warning. Members are engaging in willful and continuing breach of decorum, and the chair is prepared to direct the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order to the joint session.
So this is Al Green getting kicked out for standing up and just yelling at Donald Trump because he knows that the Republicans are on some fucking bullshit.
Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber. Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House. Mr. President, you continue.
Thank you. Over the past 6 weeks, I have signed nearly 100 executive orders and taken more than 400 executive actions, a record, to restore common sense, safety, optimism, and wealth all across our wonderful land.
One of those executive orders was repealing the cap on certain prescription drugs that Joe Biden signed into law.
People elected me to do the job, and I'm doing it. In fact, it has been stated by many that the first month of our presidency, it's our presidency, is the most successful in the history of our nation.
I don't, by what market? Like, this is what I mean. This is what I mean. What basis is this opinion formed on? Because by every objective metric, it has been a fucking terrible start to his presidency. I mentioned the stock market being down more than 1,000 points. There is a measles outbreak running through Texas, which has already killed somebody. Bird flu has decimated the avian population and has, of course, led to higher egg prices. Prices in general are still super high. The cost of housing is still super high, and things are only going to continue to get more expensive because of these ridiculous tariffs that he has placed on China, Canada, and Mexico. If Republicans had any fucking stones, if they had some fucking balls in their scrotum, they would stand up to this bullshit.
And what makes it even more impressive is that, do you know who number 2 is? George Washington. How about that? How about that? I don't know about that list.
Dude,
but,
I missed
but
this
we'll
part.
Take it.
Oh my God. Number two to Donald Trump is George Washington. Just like number 2 to Patrick Beverly is Steph Curry. This is like, you cannot write satire like this. The guy who had the White House tweet out a picture of him as a king, the guy who said long live the king, is a more impactful president than George Washington, who led the American Revolution and detached us from the British monarchy.
Within hours of taking the oath of office, I declared a national emergency on our southern border, and I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country. And what a job they've done. As a result, illegal border crossings last month were by far the lowest ever recorded, ever. They heard my words and they chose not to come. Much easier that way.
Whoa.
In comparison,
No
under
calm.
Joe Biden, the worst president in American history, there were hundreds of thousands of illegal crossings a month.
Joe
virtually
Biden put
all-
up wilt numbers when it came to deportation. Him and Barack Obama were literally Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen when it came to deporting migrants.
All of them, including murderers, drug dealers, gang members, and people from mental institutions and insane asylums, were released into our country. Who would want to do that? This is my fifth such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do.
No,
I could
that's
find a
true.
cure to the most devastating disease, a disease that would wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history, or the stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. And these people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no
He's
matter
also
what.
saying this as if Republicans did not fucking hate on Joe Biden literally every time he came outside. Like the 17 times that he showed face, he's acting like the Republicans embraced him with open arms. When Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene threw temper tantrums at this speech when Joe Biden was in this position, he's just making this false comparison.
Five times I've been up here. It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way.
There were also a ton of theatrics involved in this meeting. As I mentioned, Trump spent like the majority of this speech talking about just like DEI and CRT. The fact that CRT was mentioned in 2025, I literally have, I can't believe what I was witnessing with that. He brought in Laken Riley's mother and sister to talk about the Laken Riley Act and further politicize her murder. He had this teenager come in. His name was DJ, I believe. He aspired to be a police officer, and Donald Trump made him an honorary Secret Service agent. But the kicker about this is that DJ had brain cancer. And Donald Trump paused and slashed funding to the NIH, which in turn slashes funding for child cancer research.
America is back.
America is heading back to the Great Depression. Yeah.
6 weeks ago, I stood beneath the dome of this Capitol and proclaimed the dawn of the golden age of America. From that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action to usher in the greatest and most successful era in the history of our country. We have accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started.
That's your warning.
For the audio listeners, this is another video from The Guardian with some of the key moments from Trump's address.
This is a time for big dreams and bold action. Upon taking office, I imposed an immediate freeze on all federal hiring, a freeze on all new federal regulations,
Yeah,
and a
this
freeze
is terrible,
on all
by the way. Like, this is, bro is like, yeah, I got into office, immediately paused all of the hirings for the federal government, and then for literally 11 straight days, planes were crashing because we didn't have enough air traffic controllers. And then Elon Musk went ahead and tweeted begging for retired air traffic controllers to unretire.
aid. Among my very highest priorities is to rescue our economy and get dramatic and immediate relief to working families. As you know, we inherited from the last administration an economic catastrophe and an inflation nightmare. To further combat inflation, we will not only be reducing the cost of energy, but we'll be ending the flagrant waste of taxpayer dollars.
So this like goes crazy if you're stupid, because lowering the cost of energy doesn't have any impact on anything outside of lowering the cost of energy. I've also never seen cope like this before. Saying that this is Joe Biden's fault is really something, because now bear with me. Inflation is at like 2.3%, whatever it is. Inflation is now normal. However, the price of shit is still high, which is not inherently a result of the Biden administration, but it's a result of the Biden administration allowing these corporations to behave in this manner and to price gouge the consumer. Now, what's fascinating about this is I remember very distinctly during the campaign trail, Donald Trump said he was going to eliminate price gouging. And then Kamala Harris said the same thing. And he got really upset that she stole his idea. And now he's just not talking about that at all. He's not threatening to penalize corporations that price gouge. There's no mention of a windfall profits tax. The cost of energy is only going to go up, especially now with these alleged tariffs on China that he may or may not roll back. There is going to be a 25% tax on electricity, which affects states like New York and Wisconsin. So he just doesn't have an economic plan. There's no policy prescription with this guy. He only ran for president so that way he didn't go to jail. And now that he's president, he's going to allow the oligarchs, Elon Musk, the tech cabal, to dictate policy that only further enriches them while stealing from lower and middle income Americans.
Doge, perhaps you've heard of it. Perhaps
you've heard of it.
Which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in
Have you heard of the sun? Perhaps you've heard of the sun.
Gallery tonight.
That was a really fascinating moment as well, because in court filings, the Doge team has told the courts that Elon Musk is not the head of Doge. But during this speech, Trump said that Elon Musk is the head of Doge. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the legal proceedings.
If you don't make your product in America, however, under the Trump administration, you will pay a tariff, and in some cases, a rather large one. Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries.
Other countries use... Other countries levy tariffs on the U.S. because other countries have a more robust domestic manufacturing sector so that they can actually produce things inside their country. Whereas the U.S., by way of capitalism and by way of NAFTA, outsources nearly all production of consumer goods. I can't even discuss tariffs anymore, because it's like it's just like screaming into the abyss. The tariff is a tax. The importer pays the tax, and they pass that price onto the consumer. If there's a tariff of 20% on t-shirts coming in from China, you can expect your t-shirt to increase by 20% because the company does not want to have their profit margin shrink. The idea that you can just unilaterally implement tariffs without also investing in a more robust manufacturing center at home is ridiculous, and it's going to lead to economic collapse. If these tariffs go through, we will be in the midst of a second Great Depression. The economy will implode.
Just today, a large American company announced they are buying both ports around the Panama Canal and lots of other things having to do with the Panama Canal and a couple of other canals. The Panama Canal was built by Americans for Americans, not for others. And I
also believe at some point he said that China owns the Panama Canal. That's just not true.
Message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. We strongly support your right to determine your own future, but we need it really for international world security. And I think we're going to get it one way or the other. We're going to get it.
Yeah, so this is really scary that he's threatening to just like take Greenland. Greenland's prime minister, their president, I don't recall what their exact title is, but has come out and said that Greenland is going to dictate their future. They're going to be the ones who dictate their sovereignty. They don't want to be part of the United States. It's just fucking outrageous that we are even allowing this conversation to take place.
Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, he said. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. I appreciate that he sent this letter, just got it a little while ago. Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful?
Wouldn't that be beautiful, folks? So that was courtesy of The Guardian. Weirdly enough, there was no mention of Israel in this. There was no mention of Israel in this address. He did say that he paused all foreign aid, which is not true because Israel, just like 1 or 2 days ago, got $4 billion from the State Department. Marco Rubio bypassed Congress in issuing this arms package. I have some more news courtesy of The Guardian. This is a fact check because, as I mentioned, there was a lot of misinformation talked about by Mr. Trump, President Trump, during this speech. It starts, the United States has not given Ukraine $350 billion since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. The president repeated one of his few favorite lines that the U.S. has given Ukraine $350 billion and Europe has given just $100 billion. In fact, as Jacob Krupa and Piotr Sauer reported for The Guardian last month, a running tally kept by the Kiel Institute for the World Economy shows that the U.S. has spent about $120 billion, while Europe, counted as the sum of the EU and individual member states, has allocated nearly $138 billion. That number for the United States, at least, is anywhere between 100 and 120 billion. I've seen multiple estimates around there, and that's the appropriate amount. When the contributions from non-EU countries like the UK are included, Europe's share is even larger. Last week, on 3 consecutive days, 3 visiting world leaders corrected Trump on the false statement while sitting next to him in the Oval Office. French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and Ukrainian's President Volodymyr Zelensky. Trump did not stop $45 million for DEI scholarships in Burma. One in a litany of spending on foreign aid projects that Trump represented as ridiculous was, quote, $45 million for DEI scholarships in Burma. There's no evidence that any such scholarships were planned. As the former representative Tom Malinowski pointed out, when this claim was first made by Elon Musk's Doge, this appears to be a reference to a different program, USAID's Lincoln Scholarships, which helped educate young people struggling for freedom against Burma's military dictatorship. It is not clear why Trump or Musk wrongly thought that these were diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships. As Malinowski noted, the USAID project prescription did specify that the scholarships were Burmese students from diverse backgrounds. That seems like an important policy given that the military dictatorship in Burma has exploited ethnic and religious divisions to stay in power. They just lie, dude. They just lie. Trump is the most prolific liar the Oval Office has ever seen. It doesn't matter what he says. The voters will eat it up. And more egregiously, the Republican representatives will eat it up. Trump wrongly suggested that millions of dead people might be getting Social Security benefits. This is an outrageous lie because it doesn't even pass the smell test, right? If you say that someone is 200 years old collecting Social Security payments, 99% of people are going to be like, there's no way that's true. And this all spawned because Elon Musk, this brilliant programmer and engineer, doesn't understand how to read a fucking database. Trump drew attention to the fact that Social Security database includes millions of people who would be over 110 years old, but as The Guardian has previously reported, when Musk claimed that, quote, a cursory examination of Social Security showed that we've got people in there that are 150 years old, this is a deeply misleading way of talking about real flaw in the Social Security system, which could enable fraud, but apparently does not. The flaw was revealed in a 2015 report by the independent inspector general from the Social Security admin, who discovered that the agency did not have death records for millions of people who had passed away. As of 2015, the inspector general found that there were, quote, approximately 6.5 million number holders age 112 or older who did not have death information. According to the report, Social Security payments were still being made to just 13 people who had reached the age of 112. At least one of those people was certainly still alive and tweeting at the time the report's data was compiled in 2013. When the report was issued in 2015, the oldest person with the Social Security number and no death record on their file was born in 1869, but there was no record of payment still being made to that person who would have been nearly 150. In fact, the Social Security Administration already has in place a procedure to conduct interviews with anyone who reaches the age of 100 to verify that they're still alive and that their account is not being used to collect fraudulent payments. Trump incorrectly claimed that a middle school in Florida had, quote, socially transitioned a 13-year-old child. This was part of his crusade against trans people, where he declared that no minor will ever be able to undergo transgender mutilation or whatever he called it, knowing full well, or perhaps not knowing, that if you're a minor, you can't get bottom surgery. You have to be 18. You have to go through various medical professionals. You have to go through your primary care physician. You have to go through psychiatrists to get this surgery. If they are doing these surgeries on minors, it is top surgery, which they already do to teenagers in certain instances, like when they have gynecomastia. Trump said that January Little John, I was flabbergasted when I first heard this name. This is one of probably the most unique name I had ever heard. A mother from Tallahassee, Florida had discovered that her 13-year-old's middle school had secretly socially transitioned her from female to non-binary without noticing the parents. While Little John made that case in a lawsuit, the suit was dismissed by a federal judge, and emails obtained by the Tallahassee Democrat newspaper showed that Little John had written to the school in 2020 to notify a teacher that her child wanted to change pronouns. The email showed that Little John worked with the teacher to determine how best to navigate the situation and thanked the teacher for their help. That is so sick that this person would flip like that. She was actively trying to figure out a solution to this, because when children are experiencing gender dysphoria or potentially experiencing gender dysphoria, the best remedy for that is not only to have access to healthcare, but to also be accepted by their loved ones. The trans community has the highest suicide rate of any group in the country, and it spawns from a lack of acceptance. Trump cherry-picked an out-of-date poll to suggest that most Americans say the U.S. is now going in the right direction. I talked about this a few minutes ago. Just flat out a lie. Trump falsely claimed Elon Musk's cost-cutting had found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud. Flagrantly untrue. Since the start of its work, Musk's Department of Government Efficiency initiative has repeatedly claimed to have uncovered fraud, only to have examples it cited turn out to be incorrect of invented. The most eye-catching example that the government planned to spend $50 million to send condoms to Gaza turned out to be completely fictional. That wasn't entirely fictional. It was $50 million worth of condoms to Mozambique as a way to help prevent the spread of HIV. It was a sexual wellness program through USAID, not from the Department of Defense giving these condoms to the Palestinians so that they can make bombs. Like, that's how it was framed. As the New York Times reported on Monday, receipts posted online by Musk's Doge document less than $9 billion in savings from canceled government contracts, none of which involved fraud. $9 million is the most liberal estimate I've seen. It's, I believe, at least the last story I saw had it at around $5 billion, while they chalked it up to like $55 billion. But again, every time there's a story about Musk cutting funds for something, it's like a $500,000 contract to get new furniture for regional agencies in Washington, D.C. It's never anything substantial. As I've said, every time I've talked about Doge, if they were serious about finding waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, they would go to the fucking Department of Defense. Because the Department of Defense has failed 7 consecutive audits. The Pentagon cannot account for trillions of dollars. 60% of their budget is unaccounted for.